Hi and welcome back. Today on Halloween Eve, I'm going to be doing something a bit different. A friend of mine who runs the wonderful art channel, Morgana Rose Art, we've collaborated today and we decided to work on Halloween themed paintings using the theme of crows. So with just that simple brief, we both went off and decided on what we were going to do. My painting, I came up with this flock of crows and quite spooky trees with nice Halloween colours called A Murder of Crows. And Morgana has painted this incredible, really creepy but beautifully painted crow here. I think he's called the Harbinger. And I think he's beautifully done, that beady eye and those raggedy feathers against those lovely Halloween colours. So please follow the link below to see her video and her half of the collaboration. And please do subscribe to her channel. It's a fairly new channel, so let's try and boost her and get her some more likes, because she's got some incredible material there, some really good, really interesting tutorials. Right, let's get into painting this murder of crows now. I'm using Saunders Waterford cold press paper. It's a 1/4 imperial sheet. It's taped to my board with ordinary decorator's masking tape. And today I'm trying out 2 new brushes. I'm trying out an Escoda Ultimo synthetic mop brush and a synthetic sword liner by Pro Art, size small. So let's see how we go with these new brushes. Now I wet the paper partially all over, and this is raw sienna to start with, and now I'm putting in some burnt sienna. I'm just scrubbing it across, keeping it darker across the top of the sky and trying to keep the light across the bottom, but trying to build up a sort of moody cloud background using these Halloween colours of this yellow sort of pumpkin orange from the burnt sienna for a sort of foreboding sky. This is going to be the background for my spooky trees and my murder of crows. This synthetic mop brush is actually behaving remarkably like a squirrel mop brush, and it's very impressive. The hairs are really soft, it holds an awful lot of water and paint, and I'm able to sort of scrub into the paint, move it around, soften it back, clean out the brush, and then get most of the water out of it, and then soften back to almost nothing for the clouds, exactly the same way as I would with a squirrel mop. So I'm very impressed with this so far. I think I'll probably get some more of these in different sizes, because I want to try and see if I can move eventually onto synthetic haired brushes anyway. So now, just to lift out a bit more light here and there, I'm dabbing very gently here and there with a tissue or a paper towel, just to kind of feather out and bring in that kind of moody atmosphere. And so hopefully when that dries, it'll be the perfect spooky background for my flight of crows taking off from the trees. Time to leave that to dry a little bit now. And once it's only looking damp, then I'm going to use my sword liner and Payne's Grey, and I'm going to start getting my trees in while it's still damp. Now the reason for this is that I want my trees to kind of have rough edges. I want the paint to bleed out a little bit and diffuse into the background, and that will help my trees to kind of look more gnarled, more textured, more like they're kind of implied that they're sort of covered with ivy maybe, or sort of dead and textured and gnarled, that sort of thing. So I'm looking for texture, interest, and these sort of stylized winter trees. Now this Pro Art sword liner has got really long hairs, and they kind of cut at an angle, and it looks a little bit like a sort of sword or a dagger blade, hence the name. But it holds a lot of paint, so you can sustain quite a thick heavy line for the trees from top to bottom of this quarter imperial sheet of paper, and then you can use the tip for really delicate lines. And because it holds so much paint, you don't have to keep dipping back into your paint too often. You can just keep going and really build up these sort of twigs and layers and branches quite easily. You can, of course, use a rigger or lining brush for this. I'm sure that would do the same sort of job, but you might have to use a couple of different ones, a sort of thicker one for the tree trunks and a thinner one then for the fine branches. But this sword liner seems to be pretty good for doing both jobs. So I'm very impressed with this one. I think this is definitely going to become one of my go-to brushes once I've practiced with it a little bit. The long hairs make it a little bit uncontrollable. It's sort of quite whippy and flicky as you use it, but that in itself is lovely because then you get these beautifully loose, expressive lines. So it's just the 3 colours that I'm using today. Another limited palette, which is my preferred way of painting, I think. I think you tend to get more colour harmony if you just limit yourself to a few strong colours. And here are 3 of my absolute favourites: Raw Sienna, Burnt Sienna and Payne's Grey. And it's particularly Cotman Raw Sienna that I really like. It seems to be quite a bit sort of paler and yellower than some raw siennas that are kind of browner. So I think this is why I prefer the Cotman and nearly always use the Cotman Raw Sienna. I think it's beautiful, as is their Burnt Sienna too, one of my favourite colours. Nearly coming to the end of this this part of the painting. Just making sure I've got enough of a tangle of these spooky branches. I'm going to leave it to dry now, then come back and paint in my murder of crows. It's nice and dry, and as you can see it's dried back a little bit lighter, although it's a bit brighter than this. The sun is coming in through my window and bleaching out the yellow and the orange a little bit. Next I'm going to paint in my crows just very, very simply using my small calligraphy brush. It's a small unbranded one. The hairs are about 1/2 inch. I think it's known as a rat liner as far as I know. I don't really know a lot about these brushes. I just was recommended to try some calligraphy brushes and I bought a set and it had this in it, and this has become my firm favourite. So as you can see, I'm just putting in these very stylised bird shapes. I'm going to try and get the wings to be a bit thicker and a bit more sort of feathery, the feathers noticing and sort of sticking out at the edges a bit more than I usually do with my gulls, because I think that should make them look a bit more like crows. But I'm trying not to put too much detail in and to keep them fairly loose and fairly random looking, so that building them up together like this, they'll build up into this kind of like a flock of crows, either coming into land or just sort of flying up from the ground and flying up from the branches. I'm overlapping some of my bird shapes, even muddling them up a bit so that it doesn't look as if they're all sort of in a very separate, neat formation. So these first few that I'm working on are my sort of largest birds. They're my nearest birds. And then I shall paint in some smaller birds and then some very small ones so that it looks as if the flock is sort of stretching back into the distance quite a bit, and not all on the same plane. Of course, you can have as many or as few birds as you want. You could maybe even have some of the birds sort of landing on the branches or sitting across the branch as well. But because I want this painting to be sort of my Halloween spooky painting, I'm just trying to play on the expression, the collective noun, a murder of crows. So when I think of that, I just imagine this flight of crows against this very strange and moody atmospheric sky. You could use any small detail brush for this, or even a rigger brush again, but that would give you some nice expressive brush strokes for your birds. As I say, don't worry about them being too perfect. For something like this, it's kind of the rougher the better, really, because then you get more movement in them, funnily enough. They might look a bit sort of silly and a bit strange, just each bird individually like this, but once you put them all together, I think that they kind of really do give the impression of a flock of birds with their wings in various different positions. As I say, I want this sort of impressionistic sense of movement to the flock and the branches and of course the sky, so that the whole thing becomes kind of fairly atmospheric. Well, I hope you'll have a go at something like this for Halloween. It's so much fun. Or get the kids involved, get them to have a go as well. I bet they'd have a lot of fun painting something like this. I think just one large foreground bird just almost on one of the branches here. And that'll do. I'm going to call that finished, and I'm now going to remove all the tape. I'm using thicker masking tape this time. I'm trying out a different brand, and it seems to have done the job. It seems to be coming up and removing from the paper without any problems, and it's given me this nice clean white border. So yeah, I'm very pleased with this as a quick sort of Halloween challenge, and I'm also very pleased with these new brushes, remarkably pleased actually. I wasn't expecting the synthetic squirrel mop, the Escoda Ultimo, to work as well as it did. I shall certainly be looking to purchase more of them. If we go in closely, then you can see that the raggedy birds give quite a spooky feel to the painting, along with the sort of really scratchy, loose tree branches. So if you've enjoyed this, please follow the link above and go and have a look at Morgana's beautiful crow painting, and subscribe to her channel and tell her I sent you and say hi from me. And thank you so much for watching. Please like and subscribe if you haven't already. And thank you so much to my lovely Patreon group who support this channel. And I'll see you again soon. And happy Halloween. Bye.